Hello, my name is Caitlin Wilson. I am the group editor for Mother Earth News and Grit magazine. Today I am going to demonstrate how to make rose petal beads. This is a project I've wanted to do for several years, and I finally remembered to film the process last summer and thought it might be nice to enjoy a video demonstrating a project that you can keep in mind for this coming summer when flowers start blooming again. I grow many different types of roses. This one is called Munstead Wood. It is one of the David Austin roses, which are known for their fragrance. And one of the advantages of making beads out of rose petals is that they smell really lovely. So the first step is to collect petals from fully open flowers. It's best to do this early in the morning. The fragrance tends to fade as the day goes on, so the earlier you can collect the petals, the more fragrant your beads will be. When you bring the petals inside, you'll need to put them into a mortar and pestle and grind them until they form a paste. This process will take quite a bit more time than you think it will. Rose petals are shockingly sturdy. As you can see, I started with just a handful of petals and ground them until they were pretty fine. The idea is to create a paste that's similar to Play-Doh in consistency. And I wanted to make sure I had enough to make a few beads at a time. So every time I got the petals worked down, I would add another handful and keep grinding them. I believe I've mentioned in previous videos that I am interested in historical projects and crafting. Rose petal beads were accessible to many people because the plants would grow wild across Europe, the Middle East, and into China. I am most familiar with European history, where rose petal beads were associated with rosaries. There are theories that rosary comes from the use of roses, although I suspect that's more of an association between roses and Mary. Anyway, this is an interesting connection to that kind of historical practice of making beads out of natural materials. And as you can see, grinding up the petals is by far the longest part of this process. Eventually, you will get all of the petals ground down into a fairly fine paste. And when that happens, you will need to heat up a cast iron skillet just on a low temperature. You don't want to actually cook the paste. You just want to gently heat it to remove some of the water so that the beads will dry faster. If you heat the paste too much, the fragrance will actually cook off. And that's a large part of my interest in these beads, so make sure that you use a low heat, and if you spread the paste out, that'll help it dehydrate a little bit, just to remove some of the water and make the beads dry out faster. After a little bit of cooking, you'll notice that the paste is darker than it started out. This is because I'm using a cast iron pan. The iron interacts with the water in the paste, and so you get a little bit of oxidization that makes it darker. If you use a white rose, your beads will end up somewhere between yellow and tan. If you use red roses, you'll get this kind of dark burgundy color to start with. Once the paste has been dehydrated a bit, you can take it off the heat, break off pieces, and then just roll them in and pinch them in your hands to pack the paste really tightly. The beads will shrink as they dry, but you want to press out more of the water and make sure the paste is really, really cohesive. If the beads aren't pressed together tightly enough at the beginning, they may fall apart after they've dried. So you can see I'm using some old beading wires that I had lying around to pierce holes in the beads. And you want to leave the paste on whatever you're using to create the holes as they dry. Otherwise, if you make really small holes, they are likely to close up as the beads dry. You're going to continue making beads until you run out of paste. I actually did this in 2 batches because my hands were tired from grinding petals into paste, so I took a break to bake beads and then went back to grinding. It can be a sort of meditative process, but I do recommend doing these rose beads in small batches if you're going to hand grind. You can also use a blender to process the petals. I would recommend adding a little bit of water to the blender along with the petals just to help it get started, and then you'll need to cook the paste a little bit longer to get that extra water out. You'll dry the beads for about a week if they're the same size as mine. You'll want to turn them every once in a while to make sure they don't get flat spots, and also rotate them on their pins or whatever you're using to create the holes to make sure they don't stick. When they're fully dry, they will be much darker than the paste started out, and they should slide right off the pins or the dowels that you're using to create the holes. If you press the paste tightly enough together, they should hold together just fine. They'll feel a little bit like wooden beads. It's about the same weight. When your beads are dry, you can string them to make a necklace or a bracelet or use them for religious items. It's best to store them in a cool, dark place, and you can add rose essential oil to strengthen the fragrance. It'll fade as they age. That's all for today. I'll see you all next time.